In this video, we're going to take a look at how to take this object and make it point toward the sphere here, no matter where it is in space, but also keeping this object flat on the plane. So no matter where this sphere or this object will be in space, this arrow here will be pointing in that direction, but will be staying flat on the ground. The problem is that if you use a lookat constraint for that, the lookat constraint will be affecting the x, y, and z axis of this object, so it will always be pointing toward that sphere, but it will not lay flat on the ground here. So let's just illustrate that. I'm going to go to Animation, Constraint, lookat constraint, and point towards that. So what's happening now is that if I move the sphere around, you'll see that it's going to follow, but it's not staying flat on the ground. What I want to do is that as I move around, it's turning, but it's flat on the ground. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to go undo that to delete the lookat constraint. So now if I move this, the lookat constraint doesn't work anymore. So what I'll do is that I want this object to always point flat on the ground. I always want this object to be not tilting up or tilting down. So it's actually looking at we can make it look at an object that is always flat on the ground as well. So let's make a dummy object here and go into the helper, use a point object, and I'm just going to put it there on the ground. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to move it outside so we can see it a bit better. So now, if I make this object here, go into Animation, Constraint, Lookat Constraint, and look at this object instead of looking at the sphere, if I move this object in the x and y plane, it's always going to be flat on the ground. Now that we've got this set up, of course if I move it up, it's going to tilt up and down, but if I always leave that dummy object or that point helper in the x and y, it's always going to point in that direction. Now what I want to do is I want to have this point helper being exactly at the same x and y position of that sphere, but not at the same position in z. So to do that, very simple, I'm going to right click on this point helper, go into wire parameter, and I'm going to take its position in x and connect it or wire it to the position in x of that sphere. Same idea. So now we've got the sphere here that will, just going to grab the x position. I want to have the x position of the sphere driving the x position of the point helper. So I'm going to point that in that direction. So now the point helper uses the x position of the sphere. So I'm going to connect that, and I'm going to do the same thing for the y position. I'm going to grab the y position and the y position there, and I'm going to do exactly the same direction, where the point 0, 1 y position is controlled by the y position of the sphere. So I'm going to connect that and undo this. Not undo, but close this window. So now what's going to happen is that if I move the sphere around, you'll see that the dummy object is following. And if I move up and down, it doesn't matter, because this is always following the y and x position. So if I move this around, no matter where it goes, this object stays flat, and it turns around with the sphere. Here, so I'm going to move it on the side like so, and move it around, and you see that it's following. So that's just an idea on how to set it up. And so if you're doing a radar kind of thing, where you want a portion of the geometry to always be pointing toward that object, but you want the base to always be flat on a plane like this, you can use this technique.